Look at it. The red carpet, the lights, the cameras. The most glamorous industry the world has ever produced. Built right here in Los Angeles, under the California sun, for the entire world to watch and worship and dream about. Hollywood. The word itself has become a synonym for magic, for possibility, for the idea that talent and beauty and ambition can take you anywhere. But here is what they don't show you on the red carpet. Hollywood was not built on talent. It was built on desperation, on control, on the oldest currency in the world, power over other people's dreams. This is the real story of how Hollywood was born and what it cost. It starts, as so many American stories do, with a monopoly. In the 1890s, motion pictures were born in New Jersey. Thomas Edison, the most famous inventor in America, a man who understood that inventing something was only half the battle, that controlling it was where the real money was, had patented virtually every piece of equipment needed to make and show a film. The camera, the projector, the film stock itself. And through his motion picture patents company, known simply as the Trust, Edison controlled who could use that equipment, who could make films, who could show them, who could profit from them. If you wanted to make movies in America in 1900, you paid Edison. Or you didn't make movies. Unless you ran. And that is exactly what the independent filmmakers did. They packed their cameras and their actors and their ambitions, and they headed west, as far from Edison's lawyers and detectives as they could get. They tried Florida first. Too humid. The film stock warped. They tried Chicago. Too cold for half the year. And then someone suggested California. Specifically, a small, unremarkable suburb of Los Angeles called Hollywood. And everything changed. The reasons were almost absurdly practical. Sunshine. 300 days of it per year, at a time when film required natural light to shoot. No clouds, no winters, no excuses not to work. Landscape. Within an hour of Hollywood, you could find mountains, desert, ocean, forest, rolling hills. You could shoot a Western in the morning and a tropical adventure in the afternoon. Distance. Los Angeles was 3,000 miles from Edison's lawyers. And if those lawyers ever showed up with an injunction, the Mexican border was 2 hours south. Pack the cameras and run. In 1910, the first permanent film studio opened in Hollywood. By 1915, the industry had moved west almost entirely. And the men who built it were unlike anyone who had built anything in America before. They came from nothing, not from old money, not from established families, not from the kind of background that opened doors in Gilded Age America. They came from the shtetls of Eastern Europe, from Poland, from Hungary, from the Pale of Settlement, the restricted zone where the Russian Empire had forced its Jewish population to live. They had fled pogroms, poverty, persecution. They had arrived in America with almost nothing and settled in the immigrant neighborhoods of New York and Boston and Philadelphia, places where the old American establishment had no interest in them and no intention of letting them in. And in those neighborhoods, they found their first opportunity, the Nickelodeon. 5 cents. That was the price of admission to the first movie theaters. Tiny storefronts, a few rows of chairs, a flickering projected image on a white sheet. 5 cents was something a factory worker could afford, something an immigrant family could spend on a Saturday night, something that offered, for 20 minutes, an escape from the tenement and the sweatshop and the grinding uncertainty of a new life in a new country. The established entertainment industry, the theater, the opera, the concert hall, wanted nothing to do with these audiences. Too poor, too foreign, too loud. So the Nickelodeon owners served them, and they discovered something remarkable. Poor people, it turned out, would spend money on escape, on stories, on the chance to sit in the dark and see something beautiful and forget, just for a moment, that their lives were hard. The nickels added up. Adolf Zukor ran Nickelodeons in New York. He used the profits to move into film distribution, buying the rights to show French films in America. Then into production, making his own films. Then into everything. Famous Players, which became Paramount Pictures. Louis B. Mayer started with a single, rundown theater in Haverhill, Massachusetts. He built it into a chain. Then he moved to Los Angeles and founded Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, the studio that would define Hollywood's golden age. The Warner Brothers, Harry, Albert, Sam, and Jack, were the sons of a Polish cobbler who had immigrated to America with almost nothing. They started showing films from a wagon. They ended up building Warner Brothers Studios. Samuel Goldwyn, born Shmuel Gelbfiz in Warsaw, arrived in America speaking no English, worked as a glove salesman, and became one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood history. Carl Laemmle, from a small town in Germany, founded Universal Pictures. William Fox, born in Hungary, founded the Fox Film Corporation, which eventually became 20th Century Fox. These men had one thing in common. The doors of established American industry were closed to them. Banking, law, medicine, the Ivy League universities, the country clubs, the boardrooms of old money, all closed. But the movie business? The movie business was new. It was chaotic. It was looked down upon by respectable society as a vulgar entertainment for the lower classes, which meant nobody was protecting it. Nobody had built the walls yet. And so the men who had spent their whole lives being told they didn't belong built the walls themselves. They built the studios. They built the system. They built the star machine. And they made sure, this time, that they were the ones in control. The studio system that these men built was, in many ways, a miracle. In less than 2 decades, they had taken a novelty, a flickering image on a sheet, and turned it into the most powerful cultural force in human history. Movies, stars, stories that crossed every language barrier and every national border. Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, Gloria Swanson. Faces that the entire world recognized, dreams that the entire world shared. But inside the Dream Factory, the machinery was brutal. The studios owned their stars, not metaphorically, literally. Under the standard studio contract, an actor had no say over which films they made, no say over how they were photographed, how they were dressed, what their name was, what their hair color was, who they were seen with in public. Louis B. Mayer personally decided which of his contract players were allowed to get married and to whom. Stars who gained weight were put on doctor-supervised diets, sometimes dangerous ones. Stars who aged were simply dropped. The studios maintained teams of fixers, men whose job was to make problems disappear. An arrest, A scandal, a pregnancy, a rumor about sexuality that the public wasn't supposed to know. Make it disappear. And if you objected, if you pushed back, if you tried to leave, the studio would simply not cast you. They would loan you out to lesser studios for punishment films. They would destroy your reputation with the carefully cultivated network of entertainment journalists who depended on studio access and studio advertising to survive. You didn't leave the studio system system left you. And then there were the scandals that even the fixers couldn't fix. In September 1921, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was the most popular comedian in America. His films had made Paramount millions. He was beloved. Over Labor Day weekend, at a party in a San Francisco hotel, a young actress named Virginia Rapp became ill and died several days later. Arbuckle was charged with manslaughter. 3 trials. The first 2 ended in hung juries. The third acquitted him completely. The jury issued a formal statement apologizing to Arbuckle for what he had been put through. It didn't matter. The studios, terrified of a public backlash, had already blacklisted him before the first verdict. Fatty Arbuckle never worked in Hollywood again. In February 1922, director William Desmond Taylor was found shot dead in his bungalow in Los Angeles. He was one of the most respected directors in Hollywood. His address book contained the names of virtually every major star of the era. The investigation was immediately compromised. Studio fixers arrived at the crime scene before the police. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories. The murder of William Desmond Taylor has never been solved. It remains one of Hollywood's oldest and darkest secrets. And behind the individual scandals, a culture. A culture of alcohol, of narcotics, prescribed freely by studio doctors to keep actors working through exhaustion, to keep actresses thin, to keep everyone moving at the pace the machine demanded. Judy Garland, one of the greatest talents Hollywood ever produced, was given amphetamines by MGM to keep her energy up during filming and barbiturates to help her sleep at night. She was 16 years old. She struggled with addiction for the rest of her life. In 1934, terrified that the scandals were threatening their business, the studio heads submitted to the Hays Code, a comprehensive set of censorship rules governing what could and could not appear on screen. No nudity, no profanity, no depicting crime in a way that made it seem attractive, no portraying interracial relationships, no suggesting that anyone other than a heterosexual married couple might have a romantic life. The code didn't clean up Hollywood, it just drove everything underground. Hollywood was at the height of its golden age. The studios were producing hundreds of films a year. The stars were gods. The world was watching. And the studio barons, the immigrant sons who had built this from Nickelodeons and desperation, had become some of the most powerful men in America. Not just in entertainment, in politics. Louis B. Mayer was a major Republican donor and close friend of presidents. Jack Warner cooperated with the FBI. The studio heads understood that in America, power required political connections, and they cultivated them aggressively. And then came the Red Scare. In 1947, the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, arrived in Hollywood. They were looking for communists, or people who had once attended a communist meeting, or people who knew someone who had once attended a communist meeting, or people who simply held political views that someone, somewhere, had decided were un-American. The studio heads, men who had themselves been outsiders, who had themselves been discriminated against, who had themselves been told they didn't belong in America, cooperated, fully. They handed over names. They fired employees. They maintained the blacklist, a secret list of writers, directors, and actors who could not be hired. Careers ended overnight. People who had spent their lives building something, gone. The Hollywood 10, a group of writers and directors who refused to cooperate with HUAC and were jailed for contempt of Congress, became symbols of an industry that had chosen self-preservation over principle. Dalton Trumbo, one of the most talented screenwriters in Hollywood history, blacklisted, forced to write under false names for a fraction of his former salary. He won 2 Academy Awards during the blacklist years, both under pseudonyms. The Dream Factory had shown its true face. It was not a place that protected people. It was a place that used them. And when using them became inconvenient, it destroyed them. Hollywood is still here. Bigger than ever. More global than ever. More powerful than ever. The studios have been bought and sold and merged and acquired. The old barons are long dead. The contract system is gone, replaced by agents and lawyers and deals that would have been unimaginable to Louis B. Mayer. But the machine is the same. The same hunger for control, the same willingness to use people up and discard them, the same carefully maintained gap between the dream it sells and the reality of what happens behind the gates. We know this, because every few years the machine breaks down just enough for the truth to come out. In 2017, a producer named Harvey Weinstein was exposed. The stories that emerged of decades of abuse, of intimidation, of a system that protected the powerful and silenced everyone else, shocked the world. They shouldn't have. It was the same story Hollywood had been living since Fatty Arbuckle, since Virginia Rabb, since Judy Garland and her studio-prescribed pills at 16 years old. The Dream Factory has always had a dark side. We just keep choosing to look at the screen instead of behind it. But the men who built Hollywood, whatever their sins, understood something true about human beings. We need stories. We need escape. We need to sit in the dark and believe just for a moment that the world can be more beautiful than it is. Los Angeles gave that to the world. And the world, for better and for worse, has never been the same. But while Hollywood was busy selling dreams, outside the studio gates, the city had other business to attend to. Darker business. The kind of business that doesn't need cameras or red carpets or golden statues. The kind that runs on fear. The mob had arrived in Los Angeles, and they weren't here to make movies. That's next time on The Forgotten History of Los Angeles.